Howdy, everybody. Bob Tallman for No Spin Rodeo. No politics, no BS, just hard-hitting news and rodeo commentary from two of the most trusted sources in our sport. Kendra Santos, Tommy Joe Lucia. Listen up, here we go.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to March 24th, 2026. I'm Tommy Joe Lucia. This is No Spin Rodeo, and I'm joined with the First Lady of Pro Rodeo Journalism. We all know her name. We all love her. It's Kendra Santos. Good morning. I think it's still afternoon over on the far west coast. It's late afternoon here in Texas. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I am blessed. I'm blessed beyond what I deserve. All is good. All is good. Well, what we decided to do today is to let our no spinners speak up, go over some feedback, and recap Houston. How does that sound to you? Now, anything special been going on in your life? Anything notable?
A lot of things are special for me right now, including, well, like for example, today is my first grandbaby's third birthday, Charlie, and so she and Lane and Elsie Bear came over for breakfast, and Charlie cooks. So she made sausage and eggs and papaya for breakfast this morning. And when I'm done with this, I'm zipping over to see her get her birthday present, which is going to be a humongous surprise to her. So, and it has four legs.
Exciting.
So anyway, that's
boy.
super exciting and fun. And yeah,
Start writing checks when they're 3 years old. Big checks when they're 3 years old, and away you go.
Just the fun. I got her a guitar because when she comes over here now, Lane just changed my flag to a fresh flag. So she stands out under the flag and sings the national anthem. And so now she has guitar. So.
And Asher sings, my grandson, who's a little older, but not very much older, he sings the national anthem. Like the national anthem is like a big deal. I think it's like, that means we're kicking it off, and he'll get in the living room, set up his rodeo, sing the national anthem, gets 70% of it right, shockingly enough, and does that. I just left his t-ball practice, and if you've been to t-ball practice for 4-year-olds, it's just mass chaos, but they're having a good time. So
it's so awesome. And who else is on t-ball duty these days is Oat with his granddaughter Aurora in Dakota. She's on the t-ball team, and he, Daddy-O went and got her, a new glove and all the things that, got to have to slide into home when you whack that. Well, anyway,
squish the bug when you're running around. And I remember thinking at the time, do you buy the really cheap plastic glove, because they're only $4 and you're going to have to get a better glove, or and on and on and on. And I think the best thing to do is just keep it reasonably priced, especially in this day and age, and let them get through that process of stepping with the foot and throwing the ball and running and having fun. And it's funny, it's the same thing. You've got the parents out there that think that their 4-year-old should be in Major League T-ball right now, right? And it's all serious and everything. Those kids, they're just slinging boogers and having a good time. Let them have fun. If they're not having fun, they won't. I'll tell you what, if you make it too serious, they'll be great baseball players in high school, or softball players if they're young ladies in high school, and they'll be burnt out. So be careful out there, young parents. Don't burn them out. Let them have fun. So. All right, well, I just traveled in from Lexington. You remember the last one? I was at Lexington in our production truck for Road to the Horse. Great Road to the Horse event. Interestingly enough, Nick Dowers won it. He's a Cowboys cowboy. They get colts, and, starting at the beginning, it looked like Nick had no chance at winning, and by the time he finished that colt in literally 5 hours of working them, he ended up winning it. And I just love it because a young lady, Elisa Wallace, who's English, rides in flat saddles, had about 5 flat saddles, breaking a quarter horse colt in a flat saddle. I'll tell you what, watching her ride that colt through some bucking episodes in a flat saddle, right? You know, you can be cowboy all you want, but with those tight pants on and and that saddle and no horn and very little swells, that's cowgirl shit right there.
There's a reason why some bull riders have done a little jumping in a flat saddle, because the balance is absolutely a requirement.
Yeah, much respect for all the different disciplines of horsemanship. Great event, very happy to be there. Congratulations to Western Horsemen and that sold out event in Lexington. It was well done. Well, shall we get into some feedback and see what we've got up our sleeves for feedback for this? I'm dying to talk about world order and politics, but you won't let me, right?
You can say whatever you want.
No, I know what your feeling is on that. All right, here we go. From Arkansas. Love your podcast. I was wondering whatever happened to the estate of Larry Mahan. I read some very disturbing posts on social media shortly after his passing and then haven't heard anything else. The post claimed that his family was getting cheated. I was wondering if there was any truth to it. Certainly hope it isn't true. What do you know of Larry Mahan's estate?
Well, what I know is that this is a great example of two sides to every story, because I heard very different stories from people close to me that were pretty much opposite stories. And so I truly don't know which one is true. And both people were very sincere in saying that their version was correct. So I haven't followed the legal trail to see how that ended.
Yeah, I learned my lesson with Roy Cooper's passing. You know, there's two sides to the story, and I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll report once it's final, but I haven't heard anything. I did hear there was a little bit of conflict, but you know, it's so sad. You and I talked about it. It seems like there's conflict in a lot of those situations, and it's really sad. It's really sad that there's conflict. I remember thinking when my dad passes, and Mom, I don't care if I get anything. I mean, I wasn't planning on it, and I didn't base my future on it. And so, there was a bunch of us kids when Dad passed, and just Josh and I when Mom did, and it was easy, right? Because everybody was easy. They're like, well, that's important to me. I'll take it, and so I wished it was. I was just blessed. I just wished it was like that for all these families, because what a terrible thing to endure a loss followed by anger.
Yeah, that is really true. And that's what, like, my outlook is, like, expect nothing and then everything's fine. And the family that I watched that was really kind of fun to watch, Oates family, 6 siblings when their dad Buster died. And I went with Oat to Buster's little house because Mary Lou had already died before that. And it was so sweet the way those 6 kids were like, they were all like, take whatever you want. And the most prized possession that the one sister wanted, she wanted Buster's thumb. Buster had cut off his thumb, I think with a lead rope or something, and he just like stuck it up in a cupboard years before that, and it would just dried. And I'm like, wait, what? You're taking his thumb? She took it back to Ohio and was very pleased to have his thumb. I'm like, oh my goodness. Anyway, they were lovely with each other. It was great.
Oh, appendages aren't something that are normally in the will.
I know.
Wow,
but it was very sweet.
I wonder if anybody, what people took with Rasputin. Any history buffs will remember that. Okay, here we go. Oklahoma. Oklahoma says, the podcast about the timed event championship was awesome. I've been waiting for this one, and having Drew on was fantastic. Congrats all around. I agree. That is similar to Road to Horse. That is such a special event that I encourage, and we did. Those kind of events are few and far between, and they're so special and they're so cool and they take such a caliber. I mean, the people that are there all the time, they get it, right? Ironman, they already get it. But maybe you should dive into it, watch it, because as you reported, it's a special event, a special set of competitors. Of course, your kiddo takes the crown. And we talked about that earlier. So it was just all around good event. We're glad you enjoyed it.
It's one of a kind, the timed event is. So
it is. It's very cool. Okay. Anaheim, California. Anaheim. Over California, where they started rodeo, everybody. Anaheim, California. Hello, I really enjoy your show. Any idea why Haley Novak is no longer on the Cowboy Channel? So I have some information on that, but I'll let you go first.
Well, okay, I'll be curious to know what you say, because I don't know why she's no longer at the Cowboy Channel. I do know that she just spent the weekend working at a pickleball, commentating a pickleball tournament. And I thought it was so great. I'm like, and I commented on social media, like, I love the dress code because it reminds me of growing up playing tennis. And she's a beautiful girl. She's played pickleball with us in Stephenville. She's lovely and she's so nice. So I don't know why she's not at the Cowboy Channel, do you?
Well, here's what happened. When the new CEO came in, they redid the budgets, probably to try to not lose a ton of money. And they had a boatload of people as employees with guaranteed 2-week checks. And they converted a bunch of them. And when I say a bunch, I don't have the exact numbers, but there was quite a few people that were converted to contractor basis. And when they're converted to contractor basis, as you well know, they make less money because they work on a per job basis, but then they're free agents to go work for anybody else, where when they're an employee, they're not free agents. What I understand is Haley Novak has not, quote, left the Cowboy Channel. She's a contractor and will do some events at her choosing. When they need someone, they call her, does she want to do it? And they negotiate the money. So I understand that she will be doing some events. You probably may not see her as much because you'll only see those people that are employees more. And I don't have that list, nor am I technically interested in it. But she's a contractor. So she hasn't quite left the Cowboy Channel. She's just, it'll be events here and there that she works, is what I assume.
Which it naturally also means you lose your benefits when you're a contractor. So typically, unless there's some sort of special arrangement, because some of us at this stage of my life, I choose to be a contractor. It would take a very special situation for me to not feel that way, because I really like being able to do what I really have a passion for at this stage of life. So I'm willing to pay a terrible amount of money for my health insurance just to have that freedom.
And so do I. It's interesting. There's two separate fields in this now. In rodeo proper, specifically professional rodeo, all of it is contractor basis. There's zero employee basis, with the exception of the staff at the PRCA. And maybe they should be contractor. They could get a few things right. But the PBR, however, because of their touring basis, it's opposite. Over 90% of their people are employees, and they get checks every 2 weeks. They have benefits, and so they have their mix is heavier employees, lighter contractors. Where in rodeo, it's almost exclusively contractors that go out and book shows with independent committees, and that's the way it is. So, and
you're talking about announcers, clowns, bullfighters.
Almost everybody, right?
Yeah.
Almost everybody is contract basis. You don't now, and I'm not so sure. I don't think I don't know this for a fact. It'd be interesting if there's stock contractors out there that have employees. I would venture to say that 90% of them have contract arrangements with the people that work for Car Rodeo or Frontier Rodeo. And that's just the nature of our game. The downside, as you all know, it can have its tax benefits if you know what you're doing. Like, if you pay attention to your write-offs, you can write off a bunch of stuff. It can have its, my dad went, I said this before, and I hope the IRS is, but my dad went his entire career and did not pay a whole lot of taxes because he had so many write-offs. Almost everything we do in our lives, Kendra, probably you also, is directly related to what we do for a living. You could say, well, that pair of shoes you wear 20% of the time when you're at home, but 80% of the time when you're working, right? And your cell phone, and so we do have a lot of write-offs.
Yeah. The only thing I'll say, have you ever been through an audit?
No, and I don't want to.
I went through one audit many, many years ago, and it was a pretty miserable experience. And I'm like, everybody laughs at me for being Miss Goody Two Shoes about taxes. I turn in every single penny of income, and I'm like, but I was put through the ringer by a person in Santa Maria, California, who, for starters, hated rodeo, and for two, she opened with the fact that this is not a job at all. She'd done all this research that generations of my family have been involved in rodeo, and we all just do this for fun. And I said, well, it's literally the sole income of my family. She didn't care. So it's kind of, hey, I guess it's who you draw if they draw you out as an audit. But anyway, so I feel like I take pretty sparse deductions because it was such a miserable experience, and I am honest about taxes. So anyway.
And I'm honest too, and I take deductions. And the way I look at it is if we get audited and they say that doesn't count, then I'll pay taxes on the money. I am not opposed to paying taxes because the roads aren't free. The fire department shows up. However, I want to take advantage. There are expenses that are directly related to making the money we make, and it's a lot more than they think. And what I've heard from friends of mine that have been through an audit, it's just like going up to the ticket counter at the airlines. You're not going to do any good throwing a fit. You might as well just bend over and grab your ankles and be nice, because if everything works in your favor, it can be really good. That's what I've heard, and I hope I don't experience it, because I'm not anti-tax. I understand. It's just we're starting to, and then the other interesting thing is like, oh, that's double tax, and it was just recently that we were talking about our taxes personally, and we're like, well, we're getting re-taxed on that because you sold it, and I'm like, no. We're not, because we wrote it off, we depreciated it, and when you sell it, then it becomes revenue again. So that stuff is so complicated that I think a lot of times we think we're getting cheated, but in the end, there's so many laws and everything around it that it's like insurance. I don't get it. I don't get any of it, and I never have pretended to. It's like, okay, I'll write a check, whatever you want, All right, the 575 area code writes in, I could barely read anything about Oakland Domer's tragic death, and my heart was broken for the Domer family. As everyone else, I had a hard time wrapping my head around this kind of grief. I waited a while before being able to listen to your interview with Callie Wright and listen to her and Spencer's journey after losing Levi. Today I listened to the episode and cried through the whole interview. Her candid comments and feelings were obviously honest and heartfelt. God bless her and Spencer for their courage and ability to move on, even as Callie admitted her faith had naturally been shaken, to say the least. What courage she has, as she has brought her raw feelings and grief to educate the rest of us on what we can do when faced with trying to comfort others in our lives and who have experienced the loss of a child. Kendra, you did a magnificent job with the interview, asking pertinent questions without pushing and just letting her speak from the heart. Thank you for your compassion and shining light on an unimaginable situation. Thank you, Callie, for speaking your heart. Please know we are all grieving with you still, even as we are rejoicing as I know you are on the arrival of your beautiful son, Creed. Thank you for sharing your family with us. I think that's how we all felt. You know, that was, if you haven't listened to it, go back. There was unimaginable truth spoken by a very courageous woman in that episode.
She is extraordinary. And today, March 24th, 2026, would have been Levi's 5th birthday. And Callie she made a video, and it was really cool to see him in action and hear his voice. And seeing Ryan Domer at the time tonight, he said that he and Kelsey watched that. And there's no telling how many people Callie helped by doing that. And it was no fun for her, but that was pretty amazing of her to do that. So
it was unbelievable, unbelievably great. And it was all her and you. Like I said at the beginning of it, I'll be honest, I was paralyzed, I think like most, going into the interview with the situation, because again, just like this No Spinner writes, I couldn't wrap my head around the pain, right? And after listening to Callie, it was like a fresh take on a very bad situation. And there's light at the end of the tunnel. It doesn't mean that the tunnel's not rugged and hard and horrible and tragic. But after the interview, it sure helped me, right? It helped me, it encouraged me that, and just like she said over and over again, what options do we have? Which is the truth in it with when any of us lose anybody in our lives, and it's really bad when it goes in the wrong order. But your options are to pull on your boots and walk forward. But it seems breathtaking to see someone else have to do it.
yes, and pretty cool to see Kelsey back. She roped at Houston, and she was just 2-1 at Austin, which is really cool. Life's not the same anymore, but
No.
I nobody knows. You don't even want to think about how you would react, really. And so I think about them all the time, all of them. And the list is way too long, but that's what we get for knowing so many people, I suppose. But, something else that I saw the other day, this is very random as usual with me, but Ace Ashford, Ross Ashford's little brother, he died last year in a ranch accident. And they had this big roping for him the other day. And I saw that his mother posted a picture of this envelope for like $800 or something. And it said Dawson Brooks on it. And just thinking about it stops me, because I'm like, I don't even think, I keep thinking I'll go back and explain why this did this to me. But so Dawson Brooks is a kid, and he goes to this memorial roping for Ace Ashford and wins $800 and donates it back to their foundation, they're going to use to help other people. Well, Dawson Brooks, I have a bottle of wine in it because I can't do anything with it, but just keep it up there. The original Dawson Brooks, I was at my brother Wade's pool on Memorial Day years ago. And Dawson Brooks, who was like a young husband and father, just fell over dead on the golf course for no reason. I don't know that they ever figured out why that happened. And his brother, his NFR header brother, Lance Brooks, they live in Texas now, but it was from right here where I'm from. And Lance was about to get married to Brooke, and his best man died it was within a week before the wedding. And they went ahead and got married, and it's that was all just such a blur going through that with those young kids. And so now a few years later, Lance names his son after his brother Dawson. And then I see that this kid who's named after this person who died for no apparent reason, and he gives his money back. And I was just like, oh my God, it was so touching to me. And I'm like, am I the only one who saw this that is like, whoa. So anyway.
You're probably the only one that can remember the history that you remember without exception. Like you've got a trap for a mind. And that's, there's so many in the rodeo family and other families, right? It's the ones we know. And like we mentioned earlier, I think that back in the day, and we briefly talked about this, but I'll reemphasize it. You usually, when there wasn't such access to everybody's business on social media and everything, you really were only intimate. The knowledge was usually within the community, or you found something out way later, and it just wasn't as immediate and instant and everybody's business as it is now. And I think that makes it more difficult because it seems like it's constant, right? It's constant death. And the truth is, we all have our expiration dates, and you need to be ready. And things don't always happen like they're supposed to. So it's crushing. It's definitely crushing. But on a lighter note, we've talked about how instrumental California is in the sport of rodeo with competitors and history. But Texas, in the last month and a half, has been a hotbed of pro rodeo action with 3 major events of 4, because San Angelo's coming. But Houston just ended the largest rodeo of its kind in the world. If you're not a rodeo aficionado and listening, there's nothing like Rodeo Houston.
And on your count, if you say, I don't know if you just said 3 or 4 or whatever you said, but the Texas swing surely has to be Fort Worth, San Antonio, Houston, Austin. Yeah. And then does San Angelo, is that finish the Texas swing?
I don't know what's actually in the lineup of that. But yeah, Austin's in there. Absolutely. And, and there's a lot of great rodeos in Houston, but this run in the first quarter is important and instrumental, as we've discussed, in setting the stage for the competitive nature for all the contestants hitting the spring and summer.
Yeah, well, and to me, okay, so Houston, I made a comment online a day or 2 ago about, okay, so it's obviously it's our richest rodeo of the regular season, 2.52 million. And I saw a lot of complaints about, because this year the grand champion steer sold for 1.5 million and the grand champion lamb sold for 1 million. And I saw people saying, that's 2.5 million. That way outdoes the whole rodeo on 2 4-legged animals. And I did clarify, because we've mentioned it before, that those kids just get a cut of that, and the rest goes into the general scholarship fund, which we have mentioned before. And now I've also seen people sort of arguing that they feel like the cut should be larger. And again, this it borderlines on political, because some of the people in agriculture feel like the agriculture kids, more of it should stay in the agricultural community, because a lot of it does go into inner city programs. But I guess I just step back and say it's hard to shoot down the idea of betting on the future generations of our world, right? And what did we say? Over $660 million has gone toward youth education in Texas. And the other thing, you could probably talk about this on the committee side. Surely it is easier to raise money when you're saying it's going to youth as opposed to raising it for other causes, right? I would think.
Well, absolutely. I mean, youth, if you're going to ask for money, youth is like, if you want people to give you if you want a good rouse at the rodeo, you just talk about the USA. I mean, that's natural, and I agree with you. But I will say this, shame on anybody that starts comparing apples to oranges. Like, come on, you know, it's the largest rodeo out there, should be, has a lot of people and a lot of money, so it is the largest where it should be. But heaven forsake that anybody out there says that we don't need all of us to continue to keep an eye on agriculture, the rancher and the farmer, because that's the origin of our sport. You can say charros, yada yada, but it's all around horses and cattle and agriculture. And we better, all of us better make sure that 4-H and FFA and all of these things that kids keep showing, and that there's an interest as kids start to dive into Xbox instead of putting their sheep on the walker. Come on, people. We need to keep supporting agriculture and youth. Absolutely.
And I mean, and I said it publicly, and I'll say it again. I do hope for, that we can continue to build the different placings, first pays 65, second pays 30, plus whatever they win along the way. But, so it'd be fantastic if it could be like, not as big of a drop from first and all that kind of stuff. That'd be great. But I would mention so many things besides it being our richest rodeo of the regular season, which it's pretty hard to knock the highest paying rodeo we have too hard. There's no entry fees. Cowboys get paid $500 if they go sign autographs when they're there. Anyway, on the highlights reel, we should mention there were 3 back-to-back Houston champs. Rocker Steiner, that horse Disco Party from Calgary. What that horse this year how many rodeos has he won? Have been won on him. Amazing. So Rocker Steiner, Riley Webb, and Cassie Mowry all went back to back, which is very significant. And you think about it, like in Cassie's case, what is the minimum? She has to go to a minimum of 25 rodeos to be able to be eligible for the NFR. That's now a total factor. Like I'll be shocked if she goes to a single more rodeo than 25 and makes the NFR. That's the impact of Houston. And that's pretty neat. Anyway, we have to mention the tie down Final Four when 3 guys broke Caleb Schmidt's 2017 record. Hanchey, who now looks to be headed to his 17th straight NFR, 7-2. Russian Mitten was 8 flat. He broke the barrier, but you have to be close on it to have a chance. And then Kincaid Henry was 7-3, and then Riley Webb, who's just won 3 straight world titles and 3 of the last 4 Houston titles, is 6'5". What? I mean, it was, and also Lanham Mangle for providing those calves. He's an NFR title rubber in his own right, but that, it's harder all the time to put together good sets of timed event cattle, right? With the border closed. I mean, that was kind of a lights out set of cattle, I would think.
Well, the calves, I don't think it's really affecting the calves, right? But the horn cattle, it's definitely affecting.
But it takes a lot more expense and pride to put together an even set where everybody's got a shot.
Oh, well, yeah, there's obvious good, yes, absolutely, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of money to get it right, and that's why it's costing committees and stock contractors and everybody a lot more money than it ever has to be able to do timed events. And that's not complaining, it's reality. And it's not because of the providers. And now with fuel going up to heck, I think diesel's $5 a gallon in Texas. It's probably $25 a gallon in California by now.
I drove past a sign, I think it was yesterday, that was like $7.89 for diesel.
Yes.
But this is, again, random from me, but I spoke with my friend Miguel, from Mexico last week. He, right after the world champions went to the White House, he was in Washington, D.C. to try and have a positive influence on crossing cattle and horses across the Mexican border. He has 2,200 fresh team roping steers that he can't cross. Those things are selling for what, 2,000, 2,500 a head right now, and he can't get them across. And his feeling is that the screw worms, that they're coming across through people traveling and different things like, and maybe wildlife, but it's not coming from, roping steers coming across is his strong
Well,
feeling.
and,
Anyway,
and that may or may not be the case. I have a feeling that common sense hasn't been applied to this, right? It's politics and bureaucracy and common sense. There's a ton of fresh cattle sitting there. They can't get over. I mean, the World Series is struggling to get cattle. I mean, the next thing will be laser printing roping steers' horns and mounting them on something. I mean, it's that serious. I mean, the size of the cattle at the I don't know what the summer holds. It's really pretty scary.
this is back to my random vault. I've talked to Jimmy Rodriguez, the Hall of Fame team roper, who I think is still the youngest world champion of all time at 18 years old, but I think he won the world 4 times and won the NFR 4 times, I think, if memory serves. But I've talked to him a couple times here lately because, like, John Papujan died, one of his old partners and stuff. But he told me about a time years ago, they drove all night. I think it was somewhere in Oregon. Times were so desperate for roping cattle. His partner, he's still like, sleeping in the truck or whatever. His partner came to get him for morning slack. And he said, I thought he was pulling my leg. I didn't believe it. But then I went over there. They had literally taken children's bicycle handlebars and strapped them to muleys. And that's what the team ropers wrote.
Hey, so there might be a prime. You might want to start gathering bicycle handlebars, because that surely, as we say all the time around here, that surely could be the case. It's serious. And it's a bit scary if you think about it, frankly. Yeah, it's real. Now, I thought it was pretty cool. We have our place in Lipan, Texas. How about that team roping pair? What do you got to say about them? That's pretty cool.
It's so neat. So Corbin Rice and Cooper Freeman. Yeah. And everybody's like, who? And they're number 1 in the world now.
Yeah. Well,
Why
I don't know. If you go to the PRCA website, here's what I don't understand on this. I'm going into my vault of randomness. We mentioned this when we had Tom Glaus on. The PRCA, it seems to me, has really 2 major functions: to represent the competitive athletes in all their disciplines, and to crown a champion and document that accurately, efficiently, and quickly for everybody that's a fan. And they're not doing a great job at that, and I wish they would get better at it.
There's a struggle going on, something to do with I don't know if it's the secretary system or the results or whatever, but it's not this. I know it's not the secretary's fault, but it's really tough. On Monday after Houston ended Saturday night, I was trying to do exact calculations on how much everybody won. And for example, I do want to talk about the rough stock end of the arena at Houston real quick, but it as of, 2 or 3 days after the event, it had Stetson Wright and Shorty Garrett both winning $65,000 in the bronc riding, which I knew wasn't right. And so anyway, I hope that the kinks can be worked out sooner than later, because I go all the way back to when I started the PRC in 1987, and the media department, we had to calculate the world standings before we reported on them. So every Monday, we're opening, I mean, there's fax machines, there's FedEx, and there's US mail. And we were typing in what they called bootleg earnings from the rodeo secretaries, what they handed in some form of paper. And then
yeah, and you walk to work barefooted on gravel both
well,
ways.
I mean, that's the way it was done. Don't act like it wasn't. But I'm saying,
well, maybe that's what I'm saying. There's a point, though, it seems to me, that someone needs to rattle some cages here, because like your point is, it is math. It could be faxed. It could be this. It could be that. I mean, even in a live event production, we have paper backups, because if the stat system goes down, right, what do? It's like the barrel marker at Houston. When the barrel marker gets pulled up, you need to have 2 or 3 backup plans.
Right. But in this day and age, we don't need to be using faxes or mail or FedEx or anything. That's all obsolete.
It could work better if your crap's not working IT wise. Then fax the sheets, or in this case, take a picture on your phone and text them.
I guess just, whatever it takes, because to be a professional sport, we need to be able to, have accurate, pretty immediate reporting. But anyway, I did want to mention, like, huge kudos for me, at the rough stock end, that Houston broke ties with write-offs, and including all 4 bull riders in the final 4, bucked off. For them, that last event, to run in 4 more bulls and hold the concert, I mean,
I'm surprised that you like that. That surprises me.
That a write-off wouldn't be better than a freaking coin toss?
Not a coin toss, but you kind of have always seemed to me to be one that, you put in all the work, you go to all the rodeos all the year. You should be able to lean back on all of that, and do or die never seemed to be your flavor. Am I wrong?
No. You're mistaking 2 different things. So if you're saying I'm against some of this sudden death stuff where everything's a one-header, that's one thing. But I'm saying nobody rides. They could have said, well, it's whoever had a higher score in their super series, or whoever won more money in their super series or whatever. But to me, it's old school and gangster that they ran in 4 more bulls, and they took the time and the expense and let them ride it off head to head. Here we go.
I love it. I just was asking because sometimes, just clarifying, there could be an argument that, you can go back to how well they did going up to that moment, and they deserve credit for that, instead of making it a, what do you got in the final 4? There's a little bit of gray area there.
Yes, there is. Yes, and I did.
No, I love it. I love it. I love it.
I mean, and then it does boil down to a one-header if it's a head-to-head write-off. But, okay, Stetson Wright and Shorty Garrett are both 89. So they have a head-to-head write-off. Well, what? Stetson won it by a couple points or something like that. And that is tough to see Stetson win 71,000 or whatever, and Shorty win 36.
See, I would think you would have wanted to just split it. We've had this conversation before.
No. I'd be good if they split the money. I'd be great if they said, okay, we have a tie. I would be good with that. If they're saying we're not going to have ties, then a head-to-head write-off is as pure as it gets compared to, let's go back 3 rounds or whatever.
But you would prefer them not to have a write-off and just to pay it based on the tie, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
It's
better for the consumer to have a write-off.
Well,
that stuff is more entertaining.
I'm just saying, if you're not going to accept a tie, a head-to-head gunfight is as good as it gets as far as being fair. And I would be shocked if Stetson and Shorty, if you would have said, do you guys want to write it off? Or would you want to take it, split it down the middle? I'd be shocked if just about any cowboy would turn down the splitting it equally because, I think it's better for the crowd. And I think, a write off or a rope off or whatever is exciting for the crowd, but it's also better than maybe, we see ground rules, I don't want to call them technicalities, but kind of, where it reverts back to something. But so the money, I mean, you don't want to toss a coin for half as much money.
No, that doesn't make sense. Toss a coin's out of the question. But I think there's a significant difference. You put a pair of bronc riders together and say, you guys want to ride it out to see who wins? You'll get one answer. You put a pair of timies together and ask them, you'll get another.
Do you think?
I do. I think I think timed event guys would rather split the money than go head to head. Now, I could be wrong. I'm not saying that I'm correct on that, but I think there's a little bit difference in attitudes like that on both ends of the arena. Now, maybe the fact that the timed event guys have a lot invested and there's a lot of things that can and can't go wrong. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I do think if you ask two tie down ropers, split the money or go head to head, I think they're going to say split the money. And I think if you ask two bronc riders, they're going to say run them in. Now, I could be wrong.
Well, I mean, and it's interesting, and I don't know for sure, and I suppose it depends on the two guys, but if the results are correct on the bull riding, well, I know that we all know that Jake Gardner, a last minute replacement from Canada, won the bull riding and won 65,000 plus whatever he won along the way. But the way they have it, and this may be right, that the three guys who bucked off, including Stetson, each got 20,000. Like they split it equally, 20,000 apiece. So, kind of interesting.
And that counts, right? That counts.
Yes. And you start talking about 20 grand for bucking off, counting. But that's, that's based on how you navigated the tournament, right?
I know, but that, we've had that conversation, and I'm not saying there's a right answer, but but if you push all that up, right? You push all that up, all of a sudden you are given a gold buckle, or getting darn close. I mean, you're looking at 30% of, on average, probably 30% of what it takes, at the long shot, 50% for some, to get into the NFR in one rodeo. And you can argue that that's great or bad. I argue it's great because here's the deal. That's $70,000 towards payments of horses that cost $200,000 now, or credit card bills, or all that stuff you said. It's still $70,000 in the bank account. Put aside the gold buckle race. That helps everybody.
Well, to me, I've always had the same feeling about that, and I've always said you've got to have the best, and then hopefully a healthy competition follows. It felt like for a few years, I felt like there was really during the Fred Whitfield, Cody Old days, there was a lot of kind of friendly rivalry with San Antonio and Houston, over payoffs and stuff, and that's healthy. So we have to have a starting, we want the first best rodeo, and then we want more to get closer to it, right? That's the ideal.
Well, and I think that the amount of prize money across the boards that rodeo committees are putting forward and their increases is strong. I mean, there's a lot of money to be won out there besides Houston, period.
Specific to Houston in recent years, I think this is true, that Houston is allowed to count all of the money because they're now following the PRCA rule book, right? I think that's correct. Yep. And there were those years where calves didn't have to stay tied, and there were some different rules peculiar to Houston, but all the money wasn't allowed to count. I think they were letting them count 50 back then. Now they're letting them count 65, but they're back to the rule book, which everybody has to be in favor of the rule book, right?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I think that there's There's rodeos that have tried to implement positive change to help us on both coasts and to help us with a lot of things that would in my opinion would help with tie down roping, like what Houston did. But eventually you give up. You just give up and say, look, if you want to battle this and you don't care what the public thinks because you're going to do it your way, then do it your way. And I think the rodeos just give up. They just give up trying to do things that'll make it easier and more palatable. And again, I've always said, you can say, oh, the rule book and but if they all compete in the same set of rules, right, and win under the same set of rules, then you have the right winners. And so I'm not gonna say that I support the fact that Rodeo Houston went back to, leaving a calf tied down in the 6 second. Yeah, that's what everybody does, but I don't agree that that's right. I think that the Calgary's way that they do it is the best thing for the future of the sport of tie down roping. But the competitors don't agree, and they run the association. So there you go. And the rodeos just give up. They're trying because, the rodeo committees, especially the ones on the West Coast where you live, the Reno Rossers and everything, they're the ones that are battling this stuff out, day in, day out, to try to keep the sport alive. And, we've got to follow the rule book. Well, have we thought about adjusting it? No, we're not doing it.
Well, is Calgary now, does it now pay 100,000 but 50 counts because they have different rules? Is that right?
I don't know. I think that was part of it. It was part of the agreement that they negotiated where they did the team roping over, all that we've talked about in the past. It was part of the agreement. However, they got to the bottom of the agreement, right, on what should count and not count. But I do think that if everybody did the traditional rules, that's what we did at Salt Lake. Do I think tie down roping's better with the rule book? No, I don't. But nobody's listening. So we'll just deal with the emails that we get with tie down roping according to the rule book compared to the way tie down roping was received by the fans when we did it the other way. And it just is what it is. I'm not going to, and so, that's the perspective, a different perspective on it. Again, if you're a tie down roper and this is the way you do it, 95% of the time, I get it. I get why they support sticking with the rule book. I would just like to see us look at some of this stuff and think progressive and think 15 years down the road and think about the guys that are battling this on the West Coast to keep the sport alive. Think about it. Just think about it. It's not as simple as well, this is the way we've done it. And if you don't like it, don't come to the rodeo. Okay. Well, when they don't come to the rodeo, you don't have increased prize money. Fans got to come to the rodeo. They got to love it. And the future generation and the new kids that aren't as exposed to agriculture and don't realize this about a calf and don't realize that, and the soccer moms out there, what they feel is what their perception is a reality. Might not be your reality if you're, dyed in the wool. These are the rules of rodeo. It might not be your reality, but it's their reality. And at some point that's got to matter for the future of our sport. I'm off of my.
And do remember too that I did grow up on the West Coast and with, a timed event veterinarian father who was often brought into the mix by people like Jack Roddy and Cotton Rosser and different people to help be part of the solution. And so I have spent a lot of time in this subject, and I've heard.
Well, and we digress. Let's get back to Rodeo Houston and make sure that we hit everybody. I'll let you finish with your run through of winners.
I'm good. You want to run through the one?
Well, here's the deal. How incredible is Stetson Wright? Again, we all say this, but to get on that many head of rough stock and, to be physically, to me, the things that I notice, physically and mentally wiped out. But what a freaking competitor. The amount of respect I have for that kid is, and you know me, I don't typically brag on the players that much. That kid's amazing for the sport. He reminds me of Ty. And by the way, Ty Murray and Bodacious were inducted into Houston's Hall of Fame for
Yes.
2026. That's pretty cool. And steer wrestling, Holden Myers. I don't want to skip anybody. Breakaway, Haley Williams. We talked about Jake Gardner, and then I think we hit everybody on there. Some highlights from Houston that I thought were pretty cool. The horse show competitors, they had over 5,000 entries. This is a livestock show. We got to keep this in mind. It's not just a rodeo, it's a livestock show. And the livestock show had 33,500 entries. Like that's great. That's great for agriculture. It's great for the sport. Hats off to Houston for busting their butts to keep the Western way and the agricultural way of life. We've mentioned all the big money. I probably won't mention it again.
Yeah. And Haley Williams, that was her second Houston title. That shoots her to the top of the list for the breakaway ropers. The deal, Holden Myers, being Butch Myers' grandson and Rope's son, world champions. I don't know that kid. He seems pretty happy-go-lucky, but I know that he had kind of a last-minute horse change, and I can hardly wait to find the time to write about the horse that he rode, because that's Bridger Anderson's Whiskers. And what probably, I don't know if anybody else noticed, but usually bulldogging horses don't do victory laps, but Bridger sure enough let Holden ride his horse, and sure enough let him, take the victory lap and ride right to the winner's circle, whatever. And if you look at any of those pictures, there are three in the middle of that horse's breast collar. For one, that horse, Bridger bought him when he was in high school, and now he's been to all his NFRs and everything, won the college finals, done all these things all on this one sweet old horse, right? And so, but if you look at the pictures, there's color there in the breast collar, and it's bracelets. And Bridger has those on for Coy Lane Hepper, from North Dakota. I think it was North Dakota, who died a few years ago, a very close friend of theirs, and one for Ken Lensgraf's sister, Christy, who died of cancer within the last year. And then for Oakland Domer, there's a pink bracelet on there. Bridger's, sister, Cedar, just married Kelsey Domer's brother, Chase. And there's some really cool little things that nobody probably really notices, but Bridger Anderson is a special guy, and he's packing some angels with him everywhere. And then pretty cool of him, to let somebody who, oh, my horse can't go, well, come on, that's his one and only horse. And to be that generous with your hard horse is pretty cool. So anyway.
It is. Well, and because a few more stats of Houston that I think are stunning that I want to get out there, the livestock show, because we talked about this earlier when you said social media said, the rodeo only gives. But the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo announced a record-breaking $30 million over that in educational commitments in 2026, the largest of its 94-year history. And here's a breakdown of it. $15 million in scholarships to be awarded this summer, $11 million to junior show exhibitors, okay, $3.5 million in educational program grants, and over $500,000 in graduate assistantships, right? And, some other big numbers that I just think are cool. This is what advances our way of life. 389,000 people took a tour at that rodeo. 389,000 people took a tour at that rodeo. Matt, hats off, volunteers. 71,000 tickets were given back to local schools. Okay, this is stuff that you don't hear about, that is the reason the rodeo committee is so important. 25,000 little cowboys and cowgirls did pony rides. 1,000 chicks were hatched. I think that's cool. 60 piglets, 28 lambs, and 21 calves were born there. And 102,000 sunflowers were planted. Now, see, these are, this is the difference between me and you. These are things that I think are cool. 121,000 people visited the farm there, right, where they get to walk through. That, to me, those are future rodeo fans. Future rodeo fans means more prize money for the contestants. So, Houston.
It's totally cool, and cool to me is the fact that this very moment, the head of the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo texted me and said thank you for going out of your road to point out some of the things that we do that are special, and that is very special to me.
Yeah, very cool event. Well, we're gonna call it a wrap. You got a birthday party. I've got, I don't know, some beignets to eat or something. But thank you, No Spinners, for listening to us. We appreciate you very much. We don't say it enough. Please send us in feedback. It's appreciated. We will comment on it. Kendra,
How do
I
they
hope
do
you
that
have.
again? What do you have numbers in front of you?
Oh, I don't.
No.
I don't.
Is
Greg
it,
normally does
what's
that.
the email address? Is it nospinfeedback or
nospinfeedback at
Gmail?
gmail.com. Yeah, and I don't remember the number, but I promise all of you listeners, I'll find it out because Greg hasn't been on. I'll have that in front of me next time so that you can know it. My bad for not being prepared on that. I don't remember. But anyway, thank you very much for listening to us. Let us know what you want to know. Let us know if you don't agree with us, because Kendra and I believe that raw, natural conversation is a solution to embargoes and stops in all instances. Talk about it. Be willing to be flexible. Have 2 ears. God gave you 2 ears. Double the amount for listening and 1 mouth. Use it less. Use your ears more. God bless all of you. Thanks for joining us. Kendra, enjoy that birthday party. We'll see all of you next week